Hello, I'm Chris Solo, and welcome to the Fabled 42, where we build community through friendship, gaming, and chaos. You're currently watching How to Craft a Story for D&D 5th Edition. But before we get into today's panel, we're going to go through some quick announcements, some DM introductions, and then we'll get to your questions. So if you have any questions at any time, please go ahead and plug them in the chat. We're all keeping an eye on that. We will try to field those questions as quickly as possible. But so let's get through this. Anything that you see that is 3D printed in any of our shows is brought to you by Griffin Co. We are Vorpal powered. Our video and audio displays, player indicators, digital dice, Zoom features, and all of our battle maps are all brought to you by Vorpal Board. And you can get all your tabletop needs at Tabletop Game and Hobby. Last little piece of information, go ahead and click that link down below at the Wounded Warrior Project. We are proud sponsors with the Wounded Warrior Project. A big portion of our proceeds is going to them as our main charity. Also, we have a 24-hour stream that is on 9/11. Yes, I said a 24-hour stream. I will be dungeon mastering a 24-hour dungeon crawl with 23 players. Not all at the same time. It'll be kind of crafted like the Royal Rumble, so we'll have 5 players at a time. Once one of the players dies, we bring another person in, and it's 4 different levels of this Dungeon of Madness. So if you want more information about that, please take a look at that, and you can also join our Discord with that link down below. But I've talked enough. So, Diane.
Hi everyone, my name's Diane Hall. You can find me at Instagram and Twitter at PrettyDM. I've been DMing for over 3 years now and recently joined the Fabled 42 family. I'm excited to be here and talk about writing a campaign.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Stuart Krug. DM, voice actor, been DMing for about 4 years. This is my first thing with Fabled 42. I've this was a very last minute thing, but this is fun. I look forward to seeing what kookiness we come up to today.
Nice. Hey guys, I'm GW. You can find me on IG and Twitter under GW005. You can also find me here on Wednesday nights at 6:30 Pacific for the last 2 finale episodes of the Realms of Ukador. It's been over 2 years. Oh, it had to come. But and I'm what?
No, go ahead. Finish up.
And among everyone here, I'm the baby DM.
Ow.
I've been DMing for how many months now? 6 or 7. Happy to be here, but I have big, giant-sized dreams, and I can't wait to throw them at ya. So let's go.
I'd like to take a little bit of accountability for inspiring you to be such an amazing DM. Do I get a little credit at all?
You definitely help me decide what I want and don't want.
I'll take that.
Good stuff.
But I'm really excited actually that you brought up Realms of Ukador. So those of you who are new to the channel, the Realms of Ukador, who is our pilot show, we started a little over 2.5 years ago here on Twitch. Our Twitch channel back then was just the Ukador channel because it was just my homebrew stuff, and we have evolved to a community-based network. We have a dozen programs that are currently being produced. Some of them are live streamed, some of them are pre-recorded. We have some with these 2 gentlemen down below called DMocracy, which is a very hidden thing. We won't talk too much about it right now. You'll see a teaser of that in October during Ukador Con. But Realms of Ukador was my first campaign. I've played D&D 20 years ago. I haven't played since. I heard that 5th edition was a thing. I found out that it was a really big thing. And my first game I ever DM'd was for a live stream audience, which was an interesting social experiment. But, aside from that, aside from being able to, I do recommend this to any DM out there. If you're able to record your sessions, whether or not it's streamed or not streamed, do it. You can go back and you can watch and you can learn. I've learned so much. My players and I, we've all gone back and watched the footage and be like, oh, you were right. Oh, no, you were right. Like, we go back and we squash a lot of those miscommunications that you don't have that, ability to do. But the Realms of Ukador, that story, and he's going to hate that I'm going to talk about this, but that story blossomed from one moment. So, me as a DM, I asked my players for backstories. most of my players, came with just very short backstories. The one player in question, GW down below, gave me some detailed backstory, which was amazing. Family member names, what they were doing, if they were alive or dead. They were all alive and all prominent in the community. It was a really awesome thing. And he decided as a druid that he was going to go wander the land for 10 years before he did any of his adventuring. From a story perspective, and this is just my method, was that I didn't think that Jadobi was his character's name, had enough driver as a story perspective. And the other players all had the very typical, some terrible group of people killed my family or kidnapped my family. The very typical, oh no, dramatic story stuff, which is also really cool. But to mix it up, my thought process was like, okay, how can I get GW and Jadobi interlocked in this story? I took his youngest elven sister and made her a duchess of a city. The very first city that they showed up in, he bumped into his NPC sister, and it was awesome. And he was like, oh my god, you're here. And they're like, oh my god, you're here. He has a niece and nephew that I created that he didn't even know about. And he's like, oh my god, you guys are amazing. And the story continued. And the very, very first scene of this entire campaign that I started with was the death of his sister. And that death came by the hand of who was Ted the Fighter, who we now know as Ted the Traitor, who was another PC, a friend of ours who played several games with us before this moment, and there was a plot twist when they're fighting to defend her. Sorry, it's still too soon, 2 years later. It was episode 16 of this entire campaign was the first scene that I thought of, and that was the motivating factor for the first 2 story arcs. And that's what we're here for today. We're here for story arcs. Like, how do we craft these story arcs? What is the thing that drives these things? And I've told a lot of my players, I know Stuart is new to our community, but I've played with GW, I've played with Diane, and I tell my players, and this is again me, every DM is different and there's no wrong answer. You DM however you want to DM. You tell your story however you want to tell your story. And if the players that you find don't work, they're not right for you. They need to move on to another DM to find a DM that fits for them. But you tell the stories how you want to tell them. And I've spoken this to my players is, I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to make you sad. I'm going to make you happy. I'm going to make you joyful. I'm going to make you feel love and feel hate. And you're going to feel all of these range of emotions because that is the human condition. You will feel for an NPC, which is just a made-up pretend character, but when that NPC dies, we all feel it. Spoilers, when Remus died, we all felt it. He was a long-time NPC, like 50 episodes, 60 episodes in, and got disintegrated by a lich. We all felt it. And that's what we're here today for. We're here to talk about crafting the story arc, crafting mini arcs within a larger arc. And I know I've spoken enough today, so let's go to the rest of our group. How do you start your stories? How do you figure out where you want your arcs to go?
Start small. Figure out, just kind of think about what you kind of want your party to go through, like whether it's just like one quest, fetch quest, or find someone or help someone, something small, so you can make your town, and then you can make where they're going if they're traveling somewhere to get there, and then kind of work out the kinks from there. And of course, you just as you go further, you kind of build on it and add more things, more complications and twists and turns and stuff like that. But definitely start small first. And some people, they do have more of a oh, well, this is the end goal before they even start. And it works for them. Some people, it just works. But for me, I kind of have a start point and somewhere in a middle point, and then I kind of build on to the path to get there.
I totally agree with GW. I usually will start with a simple quest at the beginning, and I have an idea of what's happening in the world around them, and whether they care about what's happening in the world is up to them, right? And I take everyone's backstories and I fashion how I'm going to tug on them to want to care about what's happening. And yes. I usually the backstories are the core part of my campaigns. So
there's an interview with George R.R. Martin where he talks about the different types of writers, And he mentions that there's the architect who plans out everything meticulously from start to finish, years and years in advance. And then there's the gardener, who has like some loose details, maybe a vague outline, but lets the most of the story grow on its own.
Yep.
I tend to be more of the latter.
Yep.
Like I am a huge fan of just like the 1 or 2 page outline prep before I start any session. And especially if we're starting a campaign, absolutely one of the things I want first are character backstories. Because then I look at everybody's backstories and goes, okay, what do you all hate? what is a common unifying fact that will get all of you to work together?
Yeah.
But otherwise, I try to. I have a loose plan, but I leave as much gaps for the players to influence the rest as possible.
Yeah.
I have a question to you seasoned DMs. How long would you say, and this might be like a ridiculous question, I'm not sure. How long would you say it would take before you start to put in breadcrumbs of each character's backstory? Like in my head, I would think like, like maybe like, let them kind of bond to like maybe like 2 or 3 campaigns. It's like them, like the party, and then start putting things in there. But you guys might have like a different. I think you said immediately.
Pretty much for me, it's immediately. In the current campaign I'm in, we're about a year in, and I think it was 3 sessions. I had them on like a little quest for the town that they started in, and then I started dropping the hints on backstories and stuff because I didn't have any idea what they were going to do after this initial quest. I had no idea. It was totally up to them. So immediately.
Nice.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Basically, if I'm sort of starting at the very beginning, I give them just a little bit of time to like get a feel for each other's characters. But if let's say the first arc, as it were, ends in a dungeon, and with a particular dungeon crawl, that particular dungeon crawl, particularly perhaps with the end boss, that's when I'll start. Like that end boss for that dungeon will have crumbs on that person.
Right.
Yeah, this touches both of the questions. So when Stuart was talking about the 2 different types of DMing, and GW can attest to this, in the beginning, I was also a game designer prior to D&D. Like the way that my mind works is you walk into a room and these 3 things can happen. So I legitimately, unintentionally railroaded parties with what we were doing because I was like, well, this is my story and I'm going to try to like weave you into my story. And I changed that mindset relatively quickly to where it's my world and it's your story. And I stopped doing that, and I mean, it took us a little while in the beginning. I was a brand new DM. I made all the mistakes, right? I would go back and watch and see. I'm like, oh, when I did this one thing, I see that I shut GW down. Fuck, I can't do that next time. Like, I need to pay attention to what's going on, which goes to the breadcrumbs. So I do the same. I'm more of the gardener now. I don't even write anything down. I have no preparation before every show because the cities are built, because the towns are built, the NPCs are built, the shops are built, everything is built. I know I want them to get from point A to point B. How they do it, who the hell knows? Like they'll do it, they'll get there, and I'll throw curveballs and what have you to get them there. But when we talk about the player, the breadcrumbs, like just the way that I do it is I pick one of the players that has the strongest or the weakest backstory to incorporate that into the arc that I have. For example, Realms of Ugdor Season 2, we were talking about Season 1 ending soon. Season 2 starts August 26th of this year, so very, very close. We've already recorded 3 session zeros. I had Diane and Eric meet organically in the world. I had Lizzie and Eddie meet organically in the world, and then I did a one-on-one show with April and got her into the world. So they came from all different parts of the world. Their backstories started this thing. They all have something with their backstories that put them on this path. So now they're all invested already because some of their backstories, some of the stuff that they created is already in the story. So now I had to decide, okay, so which one is the catalyst for that first arc? I have ideas for like some of the major arcs of this story, but with that first arc, so I picked one of the 5 players who was going to know a little bit more about X that is part of that first story arc. And none of them know, and Diane is one of the new players, and she's like, what is he talking about? Is it me? So, and that's the thing, and the trick for me anyway is you don't want to just focus on one player, which we did make the mistake with Jadobi for a while. It was just the Jadobi arc for a while. But then I started weaving in other breadcrumbs later that I should have done sooner, which invests the other players where you're not just following the one player to do their one side quest and it happens to be a main arc. But it becomes, it was Boo and then Denahi also were invested in the story arc. And the whole premise of Season 1 was bound by fate, which we joke about all the time, and I throw that slug line in there whenever I can. But all the players were actually invested in that first major story arc, and Ted the Fighter actually was part of that major arc, spoilers, with Jaren. So Jaren was the first major arc of the first half of this story. So, and Ted was a mini arc of that same story, and the other players didn't know that yet, but they were actually intertwined into that story. And the best way I can describe this is each of my players is a piece of rope. And I tie each piece of rope on a different part of the wall behind me. And I grab all those pieces of rope and I go to the end of the room and I start to twist that rope. So each of their individual storylines becomes one piece of rope once you get through that middle part of the arc. There was a really good question. I'm trying to find it real quick. Who is your biggest example at the start of your DM career for writing? Like inspiration. Who ignited these stories for you?
That's a really good question.
Not only do I have my answer, while we were talking about the different styles of DMing, I found this quote. First of all, writing inspiration came from Patrick Rothfuss. And second, did any of you read the Rick and Morty D&D crossover comic?
Did not.
I saw some of it, yeah.
First of all, it's phenomenal. It's really well done. But there's this beautiful poem that he actually writes in it. And it's like across 5 panels, and it's this DM entity taking different forms. So the first one he takes is the cartoon Dungeon Master from the 70s, 80s cartoon. Okay. I am a scaffolding you build upon. I am the shape that gives your story form. I am like wind upon the water. I can be calm or cruel as any storm. You are the boats upon the waves. You rig your sails, you ride the swell. You take the tiller with the tale you tell. The tack or tactics are all yours to choose. I make the game. It's yours to win or lose.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I don't know if I can say I was inspired by a particular writer when I started DM, but I will say that because I used to play D&D when I was younger during 3rd edition or 3.5 with my mom as the DM. So I was definitely inspired to take up the DM title because of my mom. I didn't even know what Critical Role was when I started to DM. I am now inspired by Critical Role. After a year, I was finally oh, what's this Critical Role all about? So now that's inspiring. But I take inspiration from everything, honestly, and my players.
Which will lead me to ask a question: what are you currently absorbing media-wise that you find is inspiring your DMing prep?
I just finished the first season of Turn, Washington Spies, and that is inspiring me for an upcoming campaign for sure.
Nice. So boomerang it back to the original question. I can't say a particular writer per se, but I have been. So I go to school for animation and character design. It's kind of my specialty, and so I've been writing stories and characters since maybe middle school or even sooner. I took my kind of crazy epic ideas from a mixture of, and then I absorbed a lot of animated series growing up. That's kind of like made me who I am today. Um, just a mixture of the cartoons I saw growing up and anime. Like when I like walked into anime, I was like, "Whoa, this story is insane!" I could hardly make sense of everything, but I loved how it was so intertwined. Even though like their stories were, some were for kids, it was still very, very complicated storylines, which I loved. It was so different than the American stuff that I grew up with. So I took my story building and inspiration and character design and stuff like that from a lot of that area. And of course, when I started this D&D journey, like how long has it been now? I think it's been 3.5 to 4 years. That's when I start seeing different streams like Critical Role and Heroes and Halfwits, and there was a third one that I really loved. I can't think of it right now. I think it was from a Fun House on YouTube, which I love them. But I got a lot of my like how I want my character to be perceived, how I want to kind of make the story for them, how they put them into the story fully. So that's kind of how I went about it. And also I did do a very, I was addicted to MMOs online. Like even
everyone has.
Yeah, but like even like when I was just in my room by myself on the computer playing, WoW or Repels or some other games. I think another one that I played was Fly FF Online, something like that. But I would literally be with my team, my like 2 other friends, and we'll be on the phone or something because I didn't know Discord back then or whatever. Yeah. And I would literally be like, as I'm like spamming my spell button, I'll be like, I feel the darkness taking over, and just like throw myself into this digital world. So that's kind of how I went about it. That's how amazing. I got my where I am today.
I want to touch on this topic real quick, and we have a bunch of really good questions that I'll field here in a second. So, I actually stopped watching a lot of media because I was realizing that to nail on the head, like everyone has a really good idea, right? So I had this really good idea for season 2 of Realms, and then I started watching Cursed on Netflix, which I highly recommend. Floki from Vikings is Merlin. Enough said. Watch the show. It's amazing. But there's some plot points in there that mirror what I'm doing in Realms, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like even something simple as calling the main antagonist White Cloaks. Like, how the fuck is that even a thing? Like, I didn't watch Cursed. I had no idea what it was. I called my bad cultist group the White Cloaks because they're kind of this, like, evil paladin group. And that's legitimately the same name, but they're the Red Cloaks on Cursed. And they're an evil paladin group. And I'm like, how does that even happen? So, like, I try not to watch too much content. We keep talking about Critical Role, right? That is the bar. The Critical Role is part of what brought 5th edition back to life. So real quick backstory of me, I hadn't played D&D forever. I got this job in San Francisco. They were like, hey, you want to play D&D? I'm like, people still play that? This was 2.5 years ago before Realm started. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I played one game, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I need to be a DM. Because I'm a storyteller. I have TV show scripts and all these things, and I've been trying to tell stories for a while, and the film and medium is just impossible to get into. And I was like, how can I tell stories? So I started researching D&D. And then I found Critical Role. Legitimately, in my creative career, I was about to give up storytelling. And then I watched Critical Role. And Matt Mercer and I were about the same age. I think he's got me by 5 months because he just turned 39 and I'm about to be 39. And so we grew up in the same time period. We grew up with all of these different things. We grew up with a lot of the same cultural stuff and the pop culture stuff, and like there's just so many different things. I'm like, wow. So I like, and we joke about it. Like the first time I meet Mercer, I'm gonna faint probably. Hopefully I don't weep and cry.
I'll cry.
Hopefully I don't make a fool of myself. But it was such a powerful thing watching that connection with him and his friends. And still today, when that was still the biggest Facebook post I've ever made. When I put it out to all my actor friends, hey, I'm gonna DM a D&D campaign. Who's interested? 432 responses. What?
I believe
And-
my response to that was, did someone say adventure?
Well, and that's the beautiful thing is I picked 2 people who I knew, and then I picked GW and Ann who I didn't know, and GW and Ann, and there were other peoples in the campaign, and they're the ones who went through the whole campaign. So now I have a best friend that's a pain in my ass down in the bottom right-hand corner of this that came out of D&D, right? Like, it's just one of these beautiful things that, you know, it's going to be weird because season 2, he's not in it, and we're used to talking like 2 or 3 times a week about something I did wrong or something he did wrong or something he wants to do that's cool or something like, hey, I want to summon 16 large bats. And I'm like, hey, I don't like conjure spells. But I ordered 8 bats and I painted them for the show last week. And it's just this beautiful thing with all these. Anyway, I went on a total tangent.
And it was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. But going back to like trying to, if you gotta be aware, because what do we all say when someone kills something? How do you want to do this? It is ingrained in our brains to say that. Like, how do you want to kill this thing, or how do you want to do this? And that's Mercer's tagline, which coincidentally, GW and I sat for a while thinking of. I kept throwing things at him, like, what about this? What about this? This is where my tagline is the choice is yours, came out. And that has kind of been a staple for this network, which is, you know, but trying to make your own content, but it's also like all these other influencers are in there. And obviously, that's what storytelling is there's so much, you can't not be influenced by shows you watch, books you read, comic books you look at or read, and all this, or even people. And then you start to bring in your real life experiences into these stories, which makes the story even more real. Lord of the Rings is based on World War II. If you don't know that, go look it up. Like, that's what it's based on, right? That's where those ideas came from, right? There's other things with that too. And I'm probably crossing certain nerd lines somewhere. But I'm going to ask a question before I get tarred and feathered. Can you talk about the best way to handle when things go sideways, either because an ill-timed roll of the dice or a group that makes an unexpected left turn?
That's my life every single week, guys. Every single week. I never know what my players are going to do, but that's the best part, is the best moments in my DMing career have been from things that went awry, that the dice said no, or the dice said hell yeah, or my players came up with the craziest ideas. It's the best moments. It's the moments you look back on how to take care of it. Just roll with it. Just roll with it. I don't know.
Just roll with it, but also lean into the laugh if there is one.
Yes, absolutely.
Lean into the laugh if there is one. So I gifted a player an evil sentient sword at one point, and their response was to like, okay, they put the sword on a table, they sat down on a chair, they took out a notepad. So, in what way do you think that your contribution would benefit our adventuring party? Are you serious right now? Are you trying to interview me? Yes, please answer the question.
That's incredible.
Oh my god.
So I'm like, okay, this evil sentient sword is going to interview for this position.
That's amazing.
In my first campaign I ran with my current group, that's still going, I gave one of my players a very cursed cloak that would slowly turn him into a lich, and I thought that they were going to take care of it, and he said, okay, this is cool, I'm going to be a lich now. So I literally had a player be a lich for months because I was like, I thought you were going to get rid of it. I thought you were going to cure yourself. He's like, but it was so cool. And I was like, okay, I guess we're going in a totally different direction with this kid.
Your hate has made you powerful.
But now his first character he ever played is now a demigod in the world I'm currently in, and mentions of him are still happening, 2 campaigns later. So
that's awesome. And like you said, roll with it. Like, I know not everyone has that. We say that not everyone has that improv muscle, but when you think about it, we improv every day of our lives. We don't know what's
Yeah.
going to happen
Sure.
in like 5
Constantly.
minutes. And,
Yeah.
and so I think when people sit around the table and they're just like improv, it gets kind of skewed in a way when actually it's just like just think like that person and just be like that person. And just from our side, yeah, just really embrace those unexpected surprises. Really like fall into it. That's and it was said earlier as well. Those are going to be hugely memorable because
Yep.
it's like when something is just I mean, realistically, more or less, most things should be out of the DM's hands. I'm very much a DM that's pro player choice. I will sit here and smile at you and be like, "You want to do that? Go for it. You want to try that? Go for it." But for something like this, where it's extremely left field, unplanned, it's just like, okay, let's go with it. Let's see what happens. Let's get weird. Like, let's make a story. So,
Yes.
yeah, and of course, when you're behind the DM screen we have the screen for a reason, use it when need be, but still let the story unfold and be engaging and excited for what's gonna come, whether it's good or bad. Just be like, ooh, where is this story gonna take a turn? So
Absolutely.
You know, I'm glad you said that because we're going to test GW's theory on Saturday night at 4 p.m. Pacific here at Fable 42, where he is
Can't wait.
where he is a DM for the first time on stream, and guess who's going to be a player? I'm a goblin cleric, ladies and gentlemen. I will push those limits. Noted. But no, to piggyback on that. So if you are more on the gardener side of DMing, and you are more super flexibility, GW and I, we've talked about it till we're blue in the face after our shows, is like, I have this really cool idea. This is where I think they're going to go. This is what I think they're going to do. If they do it, cool. If they don't, cool. They always do something better. They always do something better. Because even though I feel like I'm a really strong storyteller and a really great improver and method actor and whatever, and I have all these great ideas, the games are not just mine. It is our story. It's our game, which means 6 heads are better than 1. And when you get those 5 heads, and if they're playing their characters to heart, like really being their characters and doing what they feel like their characters would do, even though the player's like, don't do that, but Joey's like, I'm going to do that because that you're playing to your character, not to the meta. And it's always beautiful. It's always beautiful, and it always makes for those moments that you will think about and talk about and reminisce about for days to come. But
and just to touch on
Yes.
that before we move on to the next thing, I just want to put a bow on that.
put a bow on.
There's gonna be put a bow on that. There's gonna be some times where the players aren't gonna. Some, one or two, who knows, may not like a certain direction that you go or anything while you're doing game. That's why after game talks are so important. Be like, how did you feel about that? What did you like? What did you not like? What to see, because each player is different. Each player may be looking for something different. So just make sure to have open communication, see what worked for them, what didn't, and kind of just change it moving forward and stay positive. Mistakes are gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Just handle it with a very positive note, move forward, and make it even better.
Absolutely. Next question, and I think I'm going to field this one first, is how do you all handle apathetic players or players with thin or no backstory or the murder hobo types? So we have a few of those in the Realms Season 1 thing. So we had players that didn't have a very long backstory. It's very cut and dry. This happened, that's it. And it's our job as DMs to bring them into the story. And it took a while with some of the characters. Like, I'm going to put Eric on blast. It was for the beginning. Back in the beginning, GW wants to go shopping, or there's some really awesome roleplay moment, and Torque, who has got a glorious long red beard, who is a Goliath barbarian, is going to drink ale. He'd always cop out and go to the tavern. So then I would start making the bartenders flirt with him, or another NPC come in there and talk to him to get him engaged. So it's our job to pivot with that. It's like, okay, you're shopping, you do a shopping montage for 10-15 minutes, probably no longer than that, and then you jump scenes to the tavern, and then maybe something else happens. Something happened once where I think it was Eric and Boo, or it was Torque and Boo were doing something else, and Jadobi was doing something else, and then Denahi got kidnapped and pulled into a sewer because everyone was doing their own thing because they felt like they weren't really going with the story they wanted to, so then you would have to navigate. It's more challenging as a DM to navigate multiple things happening at once, but sometimes you have to do it all the time. But the beautiful part about it is, like, halfway through the campaign, that stopped being the knee-jerk reaction, where people were now shopping and people were now being part of that group. And that comes to with, working together as a group, as a party, and really starting to integrate all the different character types. And then the players, like Jadobi, were like, hey, Torek, let's go shopping. So now you're including the player as a DM, and then the players are also being inclusive, which just makes everyone feel more comfortable about shopping. And then murder hobo types, I actually have a fun thing with that. When COVID first started, I started DMing kid camps. And some of the kids just wanted to run around and kill old people in the forest. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, 11-year-olds wanting to go out there and just kill an old man. I'm like, okay, you can do that. And it doesn't happen until the DM says it. So, like, I can always just veto something. But that old man who was a quest for them to go save turned out to be a wizard. So obviously trying to kill the old man backfired on them dramatically. Kind of taught them a life lesson there in a moment through D&D, like, hey, stop playing Call of Duty all the time, be a human being, and stop killing old people in the forest. And it kind of worked. But that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, consequences. In-game consequences
Yes.
are huge.
Yep.
Yes.
I had my sister was actually playing with us for a little bit and was playing a Kenku and was just constantly cawing and wanted to immediately kill some guards in the town for no reason. And there was consequences, right? So that shut that down really quick. That's how I luckily haven't had a lot of murder hobos. So just consequences. But backstories, you just got to tug them in little bit by little bit, and hopefully the players can include them in any shenanigans they get into. My group has been really great so far. I've been really blessed as a DM. I haven't had too many horror stories, but...
Nice.
Yes, absolutely lean into consequences when they are necessary. When it comes to players giving me little to no backstory, I had one person come into our game once, and she knew she wanted to play a Dragonborn Revenant. And I was like, cool, why are you back? What's the reason that you came back to this earth? And she goes, I don't know. And I'm like,
oh,
okay, no, that's good. That means let's say you don't remember. And then we can fill in those blanks as we go.
Yeah.
So my advice when it comes to if a player comes to you and they have little to no backstory, give them a mystery to solve. So
I like that.
Like one thing I did was, this particular character was a ranger, and I decided that, their bow is going to occasionally trigger certain memories. And so like so their first sessions, they'd freshly risen, and so they were doing target practice to get used to their new rotting arms. And after they fired an arrow, a vision occurred of them in that same archery, in that same range, but significantly younger. And a familiar face shows up, and they're like, "I know," and it's this person. You don't remember how or why, but this person looks very familiar. And so you give them something to do.
Yeah.
If they can't fill in the blanks, then give them blanks that they want to fill in.
I agree with everything that's been said. Not everyone is going to be, that lengthy writer that you want. Not everyone's gonna have that exact backstory. I mean, as a DM, we should not really, be looking for, I guess, the perfect backstory, because everyone is coming at this from a different angle. It's kind of how we put it all together and how give them meaning. Give them a mystery to solve, or we can make our own story as to why they don't remember, things like that. As for the murder hobos. Yes, consequence.
Yes, how
So
are you
I
going to
am
deal with that?
I am a like naturally I'm a naturally kind of neutral good kind of person. Just it's just how I am. So like if one of my players are gonna be like, I'm gonna go kill that innocent person, like, oh, but why? But I'll let them do it. But I will, have it be like maybe they were seen. Maybe a guard was like right around the corner, a guard that happens to be 10 levels higher, or maybe blackmail maybe an NPC blackmails their character. Like, I saw what you did. If you want me to keep this quiet, then you're gonna have to do this, and these jobs for me. Just make them feel uncomfortable about certain things that they did, and now they have to kind of work their way throughout through the future, through the campaign, to kind of have their characters kind of grow and get better, thinking that there's like consequences for everything, and also help them as a player get better. So like you don't have to just kill everything. You can ask a question or two, maybe, like, are you bad? Are you good? You don't know? Okay, maybe I'll cut you, but I don't know. But
Someone clip that, please.
We are currently undecided as to whether or not we will cut you, but we will get that.
But I do want to say we gave you a chance. There's been a couple of times with me in game, so I'll be like, I'm gonna hold, this spell or this attack or whatever until they answer me, and I'll be like, who are you? What are you doing here? And then, of course, sometimes the DM will be like, they don't say anything. They just, I'm just like, I guess I'll wait my entire turn to find out. But then, like, and there's a payoff. Like, maybe they could end up being an ally after you talk to them, or maybe they're just bad and you just knock them down. And so it's a learning experience across the board. Also for boomeranging back to backstories real quick. Not every backstory has to have something horribly traumatic. It is okay to be a happy character. In the campaign, you will.
I'm sorry, GW. I'm sorry, okay?
I wasn't going to say nothing. But I'm just going to say, you can be a happy character. A happy character can have deeper meaning in the story. And then, like, as the campaign goes on, you experience real life and see more things. And it kind of makes you maybe a bit harder or something from where you grew up as or anything like that. But don't be afraid to just be, just make up your own story. Like, all your family doesn't have to be dead. It's okay. It's all right.
And it's actually better if they're not dead, because then the DM can kill you.
Yes!
Wow! Calm down.
No, but I mean, that's the whole reason for the backstory. Like, you want to give your DM the most amount of information so that they can... Because if they don't put in any of your backstory into the story, then you're not as invested as you could be. And I joke with GW all the time, and we've talked about it for a while. He didn't talk to me for a week. Legitimately, in real life, didn't talk to me for a week when I killed his pretend sister. But because those emotions really set in. But when you look from the backward perspective of Jadobi's character arc, it's powerful. It's almost, I would actually arguably say that Jadobi's character arc is just as, if not more powerful than Daenerys in Game of Thrones. When you look at her character arc, being with no power and then getting all the power, right? Like, her character arc is phenomenal. And Jadobi has something very similar with his arc and all these trials and tribulations and good things and bad things. Like when I gave him a baby. Like, I didn't give him a baby. Never mind. I said that the wrong way. His baby mama gave him a baby. Doesn't matter. I'm moving on. There was a really... Oh, yeah. So, homebrew worlds or sourcebook campaigns. Why not both is my answer.
Both.
Both, yeah.
Oh, just because the fans have joked and everyone says don't make his head any bigger, but like people call it the Soloverse, and I don't want it to call it the Soloverse. It's the multiverse. We've incorporated. Yes, they do. It was Crooked. Crooked said the same thing when he also created Ukadorks. But anyway, Crooked, miss you. But I've incorporated Forgotten Realms into Ukador. Ukador is my homebrew world. those universes are connected. Vulrock, the Lich, who was actually Asurok, is the same person. And he would travel between the realms to stir shit up. Like, there's been ties with those worlds. And we're actually joking and talking about it with Diane's new show that starts in October, Shao Al Ghul. Like, potentially that could be connected to Ukador. And it could be connected to something else. Origins of Ukador is currently doing Tomb of Annihilation. You don't have to do Tomb of Annihilation in Forgotten Realms. You can do Tomb of Annihilation anywhere you want. You can connect those stories. And that's what I'm saying is, like, and you all agreed, like, do both. Do what feels right. If you can't homebrew, and I had this argument with Chris Perkins and Greg Tito at TwitchCon 2019, where they only talked about supporting people who are doing the actual book content. And I'm like, well, not everybody can homebrew. So if someone watches a homebrew stream, like, wow, I really love D&D. How do I get in this? I can't build my own world. Oh, you can't? Go get a book, and then you can do it yourself. Like, it's just about promoting the storytelling. Like, if you can't facilitate your own world, which is a crazy tunnel that you don't want to go down, trust me.
Oh, it's a tunnel.
But you love it. But it's one of those things. But I'm done now. Anybody else?
I didn't think I could homebrew a world for a really long time. I have been playing, and I'm still currently in my home game playing in the Forgotten Realms. But then I started to change the Forgotten Realms because I was like, oh, well, they want to go to this town and there's not a lot of information on it because they go away from the Sword Coast. You know, the Sword Coast is like really the only part that there are any content on currently in the 5e edition. But so I was like, okay, so what do I want this town to be like? And then I was like, okay, well, now I'm homebrewing. And then I had a lot of time on my hands when I couldn't work. So I was like, okay, here we go. Let's make my own world.
And it's a really awesome world. Like, it's a really awesome world.
I love that. The story of a bored god. I'm going to create a world. I'm going to make a universe. Let's do it. Why not?
Exactly.
GW, the first thing about DMing is DMs are not gods. Gods are just NPCs.
I knew that was coming. I knew he said that. He said that to me at least 5 times a day. At least.
I love that term. I've never heard it, but I love it.
I hear it all the time. But for source material, like I said earlier in one of the other questions, not everyone, even DMs, not everyone's going to be a writer. Not everyone has that experience to kind of put stories together, so things like that. So starting off with modules just to like get yourself in the world and get that experience and everything, do it. Yes. Like, you know, there's really, for me as a creator, my own opinion is homebrew can be better just because it's your world, it's your brainchild, it's your everything. But you don't just start off like that. You need to somewhere as a starting point to like get yourself those skills and see how things should be written and how things should flow and things like that. So for you, until you get to that that point, go get the module materials, run it with your friends, learn from it, enjoy it, make all this the memories and stories that you want. Take from them what you liked most, and once you feel confident enough to take that first step into building your world, your lore or anything that you want, take all the positives from those campaigns you want to put it into your game, and then start to be like, okay, let me add on to that. What are the things that I want to see that I like that weren't in the other games? And the same with your players. You can ask your players, hey, so from our past games, these modules, what did you like? What you did? What didn't you like? And what do you want to see more of? And it even then it turns into even more of a communal storytelling with all the people around you. So awesome. Modules, homebrew, yes.
We have so many really, really good questions. If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to go a little long. I know we have another show later, but I'd like to keep going.
Let's do it.
Real quick. Shipley asked several really good questions. So the first, technically the second one, but I can answer it really quickly. What video streaming tools to enhance remote play? Not for Twitch, but maybe Zoom Meet, virtual tabletops. 1,000% Vorpal board. What we are using right now, I'm going to post a link in there. Their Kickstarter, you can still late pledge. They go public in September. I've used every program known to man for virtual tabletop. Nothing makes you feel like you are at the same table more than Vorpal Board does. We have player color indicators. We have, where's that? We have digital dice ingrained in this feature. There's zoom features on battle maps. There's a battle map feature. If you want a demonstration, check our VODs. We just had a Vorpal Board, how to DM with Vorpal Board in our VOD right now. It's 1,000% better than everything. We have a show tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific. Whenever we're done with this, I'm going to prep for that. It's Cantor Chronicles episode 3, I think. Episode 3. I play an Oricaiath barbarian, half orc, half Goliath. His name is Viago. He's amazing. Please watch it.
Episode 3.
There'll be a battle camera in that show, so you can actually see all the functionality of all the players with the overlays, everything else. Roll20, tabletop simulator, super clunky, buggy. The video quality is not good. The audio quality is not good. Zoom sucks. People leave, get dropped all the time. You can't do anything. The biggest thing about Vorpal compared to everything else, hey, I want to move right there. You point at the screen and nobody knows where the fuck you're pointing at because they can't see your finger. Vorpal Board has, as GW is showing us, a player cursor on the map that you can point on the battle map and show exactly where you want to move. There's a zoom feature with it too. I always yell at them because they're always playing TIE Fighters, but it's fine. I talk really passionately about this is because we tried and struggled for a really long time. God, I hate you. We struggled for a really long time trying to find something that worked because we started off Realms of Ukador at the same table. I had to move. It was heartbreaking that we could no longer see each other all in the same room. We went remote. It took us a while. We found Vorpal. Never looking back. It's the best program on the market by far, and it's really, really affordable. Please check them out. The second question. Yes. The name of my LLC is Squirrel Films because I squirrel. Apologies.
All the time.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I also have Asperger's. That's just what happens, right? That's just what happens. My brain is going everywhere. Same from Shipley as well. What is a moment that you remember that your players inspired you to improve something, to improvise something cool or on the spot? Dragonborn Revenant aside.
On the spot. I'm gonna let the seasoned DMs go first.
Oh wow. Okay. There are so many.
There's so many. I'd like to say all of them, but yeah.
Every single session I have to improvise something crazy, and that's really cool because all of my players are super creative in what they think their character should do. Wow.
I think I'm gonna say Carlox.
Oh, I'm gonna actually talk about my last home session. That was actually this past Wednesday before I watched Crazy Riha.
Crazy
so
Riha,
I think
what?
they are descending into the Underdark in my. Oh my gosh, she's amazing, and horrible at the same time. They are currently descending into the Underdark for many reasons, but obviously there are a lot of spiders, and I had this huge spider encounter set up where they were going to fight giant spiders and a giant spider queen, and it was super cool. And they were like, oh, well, we want to tame these giant spiders to ride to descend on the spider webs. And I was like, okay. So I started having them roll some animal handling checks, and they all rolled really high. And I was like, okay, guys, we're doing this. And they tamed like 3 giant spiders, and they started to ride them down into the Underdark. And I had no idea that was going to happen, and it was incredible. I'm always inspired and impressed with my players every single week.
So the same player who interviewed the evil sentient sword.
Oh, good.
I made brave of mistakes and giving them a ring of animal friendship.
Oh my god. Someone gave my barbarian the ring of jumping. I understand mistakes have been made.
So we had just finished a walking waterfall fight at a beach.
Okay,
like all the enemies had rings of water. So we finished that fight, and one of them had the ring of animal friendship, and this one player, of course, grabs it, puts it on. I want to talk to. Is there a dolphin nearby? Even Rod, even there is a dolphin nearby. I run up to the dolphin, and I go, hey, what's going on, man? Like, what's the latest news from the ocean? I have to think of something. And the first thing that came out of my mouth is, man, you do not want to fuck with Atlantis right now. To which, of course, he went, was it Atlantis?
As the words come out of your mouth, you're like, no.
9 months in Atlantis.
So now that's canon in your game.
He literally went, guys, we have to go to Atlantis. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm prepping an entire arc. Here we go.
You know, you bring up a really good point, because DMs, and I give GW a lot of shit because he really challenges me as a DM, which just makes me a better DM. 16 large bats on the battlefield, because why not clutter the battlefield with 16 bats? It paid off. It was really cool. And I actually got them. We painted them. We used the shit out of them, because he would put them out there and I'd kill them all. And he'd be like, Use the spell slot, bring it back. I kill them all. Put spell slot, bring it back. But one of the biggest challenges, and it's not anymore, I think I'm pretty comfortable now because he's really broken me in. Because we have a fucking goose in our second season. Yes, I love you, April. And his name is Honkers. So I'm going to have to honk a lot, which I have my honk down. But GW would always want to talk to animals. And I
can talk to animals.
Oh, it's amazing. But they don't have to respond, so they just understand you, so that's a little bit easier.
But maybe some animal sounds.
Right? Thank you. Like, come on now.
In the beginning, I was like, oh, there aren't any birds around, and he would be like, oh. And then he'd be like, oh, there are no squirrels around. He'd be like, oh. And then he tried to talk to a bird, and the bird was like, fuck you, and left. And he was like, oh. And I'm like, I'm shutting my player down. I need to get over my social issues and just talk like a bird. You don't have to use any special voices. Just talk like a fucking bird. How you doing? I'm a bird. That's fine. I mean, I do different things now, but it was just the voice thing was always just like monkey wrench. I'm like, oh God, I'm a bird. I would do something weird and then whatever. Anyway, it was tangent.
So for me, for my memorable thing that I was completely unprepared for as a DM, but I just went with it, and I was just like, this is kind of ridiculous and cool. One of my players, who was a ranger, so it makes it even more funny. They were going around, and he was like, hey, do I see any sticks on the ground? I was like, roll a perception check. Yeah, you see a stick. There's a couple of sticks around the ground. Do I see a long one, a really long, a pole? Investigation. Ah, damn it. Yeah, sure. You see a really long pole-ish type stick. He took that stick for the entire game, and everywhere he went to, the way he would check for traps is he would just use his stick. I think it was either a 10 or 15 foot stick. He was like, hey, how about that? What's that doing? I'm gonna be like, damn it, it explodes. Damn it! You find it. He was like, oh, okay, I think it's cool, guys. And he just took that stick everywhere. And then another thing that with that stupid stick, he was like, they were breaking and entering or something. And he literally threw a rock through the window, a super stealth, and then he put the long stick through the window and just started jiggling around to get all the glass out and everything. And he was like, clear! And I think he even used it to poke the big bad or something. But I was like, that freaking stick I gave him, dang it! But it was hilarious. It was ridiculous and hilarious, and I loved it.
Most of the time DMs are like, man, I wish I didn't give them that super cool magical thing, and you're thinking, I wish I didn't give them that stick.
Why did I give him that long stick? But I was so happy. I was so proud because that was so smart. That was freaking smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was, as DM, I was both like, oh, and I was like, I'm so proud of you, man. I'm so proud
absolutely.
It was good. Real quick with my memory, and then we have a few more questions. Just trying to get them all because they're all really good. Was Carlox. So I don't even remember how they met this damn ox, and they couldn't name him. And they were like, "What about Carl?" And then GW was like, "Well, he's an ox. His name is Carlox." Amazing. Carlox was the first animal you tried to talk to, right?
The very first one.
Well, the first one I let you talk to, I think, is what it was, because you tried to talk to other things before that, and the birds would just fly away. And he was just like,
Carlox was episode 1.
Oh, he was. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so they have this ox that they would pull around in a cart, and they wanted to try to help him defend things, right? Or be better protected, I think. They found Trixie, who was this little gnome who talked really high pitched, and she started doing all this crazy shit. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we want to do something where it protects." So like initially, I was like, "Oh god, like okay." So I'm gonna build some sort of weird cart that they want to help protect him, and then I just paused for a second, and internally I just, like we said, you slide into it. Okay, we're gonna build you a fucking cart. So they left, they came back. This cart was mechanicalized because she was a little engineer. It was like a little covered cart that opened up with these giant ballista bolts. There's a huge ballista in the back. It's all fireproof, and like a big panel would flop over Carlox, and like a little food trough would pop up. So he'd just sit there and eat, and he was protected from dragon attacks, which they used once against a dragon, which was awesome. But that's one of the most memorable moments, was, having this just weird thing that they wanted to do, and I was like, whatever. And at first I was just like, I don't want to do that. That's weird. And then I lit into it, and then it was fun. And then the cart, who knows where the hell that cart ended up. But that was a fun moment. Let's see. Another question is from Kuro is, how do you deal with players who try to take control of the story from the DM by doing a party betrayal or sudden character turnaround with the story? That's a good question. You punch them across the table. No.
I would, if they wanted to do that, whether lie to each other or just all of a sudden do this switch out of the blue, I would let everyone have a reaction to, because they could use their reaction to maybe stop this person, or they can start, I will have them roll different roles to perceive, maybe their body language or something like that, just for the future references, so they be, maybe they'll always keep an eye on that person. And consequences, like depending on what that, if they're going glitch mode out of the blue, then consequences, right? Maybe their party will turn on them, maybe they'll probably give them a second chance, maybe they'll talk to the wrong person to be a lich, who knows. But as for making sure they don't have the spotlight, I am very much like, okay, there's always that player, one or two or more, that knows what they want to do. They're on it. They have the real life reflexes. They got a plan. They got just plans on plans on plans. And there's the other one who's more timid, more calm, who kind of just goes with the flow. I'd be like, all right, so you know what you want to do. So while you're doing that, and I'll call the player or their character, I'll call them by name. While they're doing, you see them doing this and that. What are you doing? What's happening with you for now? And I would go down the line to make sure everyone gets to speak and everyone says their mind. Because some people, they might have something on their mind, but they are waiting for a moment for someone else to stop talking or something, and sometimes that moment never comes. So I am very much like, okay, what are you doing, so and so, and I'll give them the light to let them kind of tell us their story on top of this person's story. So that's how I would handle it. How about you guys?
I definitely agree with GW on the spotlight. There are going to be the players that are going to drive the story more. And some players just want to chill out, and maybe they just want to mainly do combat, and that's fine. But absolutely asking them outright if they want to jump in on the role play or whatever.
Expectations.
But yeah, also just talking with your players outside of the game. If they're okay with not being in the spotlight and they just want to be there to enjoy the game and enjoy what everyone else is doing, and take their turns on combat, as long as it's not inhibiting anyone else's fun, that's totally fine. If it's not what you want as a GM, that's also fine. Setting expectations, and then also asking your players to be like, hey, you're usually super active and driving the party. How about you get everyone else involved? Kind of like the shopping scenarios with Torque. Like, hey, let's what do you think about our plan, or whatever the case may be. And I totally blanked on the other part of the question.
When a character kind of goes completely left field without telling you or the party.
Right, and like, yeah. I would say I would allow it until the action actually happened when they turn on the party. I would let that scenario play out, let the other party members respond, and then that player's character becomes an NPC and potentially a mini boss or a big bad or whatever. And I take control of that character then, and they roll a new character if they want to continue in the campaign. Because when you have players going against each other, it's gonna go into chaos, and no one's gonna have fun then, because the story's now just centered on them fighting each other, and that's not really that fun.
Excellent.
If a player tries to drive the story, then one thing yes, there are the players that like try to that always know exactly what they're doing. There's the ones that are a little bit more timid. So if one of the players on that more driven side tries to drive the story, then I will, then what I'll do is in between sessions, tweak the story arc a little bit so it focuses more on that timid player's backstory.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh, I like it.
So that it's a situation of, hey, you always know what to do, you're very driven, but this is now an opportunity for that other person to take the wheel. Because everybody should have their story moments, their moments where they actually, where they get to say what they want to do and how they want to move the story both for themselves and as a whole forward. And like my home game has 7 players, so that is very much a juggling act, and something I'm constantly checking myself of like, okay, we haven't done a lot with this player in a while. Let's see how they're doing. Let's see what they would want to be doing. And when it comes to a party member that wants to turn on everybody else, usually my go-to is to take their powers away. Like, say a warlock tries to betray the party. Patron just goes, wait, no, I need them too. But if you're going to turn on them, then whoop. And suddenly they're not going to want to turn on the party as much.
You make them vulnerable. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
I like that.
Yeah, so I have a final thought on that topic, and then we'll close out the panel. So luckily, because we do a show, we do a stream, none of it's scripted or any of that crap, but like we all have the same understanding, like this is a story that is going in a direction. Not to give any of my players any ideas, but if that had happened in one of my games, I'd let it play out. We know that, so we use Vorpal board for any PvP. We've had several instances where someone didn't like something someone did, and they punch them, or they attack them or whatever, and they have a scrap, and we do PvP on Vorpal, so it's 100% fair. I'd let that person go dark. I'd let that person attack the party, and then they run off into the distance. And then I'd have a conversation with that player after the fact. Because obviously that player, I wasn't doing my job as a DM for that player if he felt that he had to do something so extravagant to drive his storyline. Okay, so let's figure that out. So maybe that player sits out a couple games, and I build whatever he did into the story. Just like I know you guys have done this. We've DM'd for a while. Half the time that you do stuff, sometimes it's the player's idea, but you play it off like it was your idea because that's how the story is going, right? You're like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm always listening. Cool. Yes, this is a mimic. This is a mimic cookie jar, because that's just fucking mean. Like whatever you want to do, right? So you use that. That's an awesome story beat with someone turning on somebody, you know. Like Joe at the end of Critical Role Season 1, right? He turned on the party. That's been widely discussed whether or not that was planned or not planned. I have my own opinions that I'll talk about offline. But use that, right? So that becomes a story beat. All of a sudden, like we'll use GW for example. GW's character, he didn't feel like I was really incorporating his backstory. He decided, fuck it, I'm going to turn on the party. Cool. We have a conversation. Why did you turn on the party? Why do you feel like that was your motivation? Well, I don't know. Well, then I start thinking, and my wheel starts turning like, okay, well, there is this big bad down the line. Do you feel like you were manipulated by this big bad? And once you start having that conversation, oh, maybe I was manipulated by Victor. Okay. Maybe I was bitten by a vampire and now I'm starting to turn and it's starting to manipulate that. So you try to incorporate it because then the quest becomes the party trying to save their friend. And you could do side quests where it's just a one-on-one thing where you're doing evil stuff, which we kind of did with Tallulah. Tallulah was like, she had to go because she couldn't do a show for a few months. So her character story was just she was kind of spying with the other people. But that could have very well been, you know, she turned on her friends and then became with them, right? So there's a lot of fun ways you can incorporate a lot of that fun stuff into the story. But anyone have any final thoughts before we close this out?
No, I'm so glad that I could be here to talk with all you seasoned DMs. I got so much awesome feedback and ideas and things from you all. So this is really cool.
Yeah. I've just enjoyed being here. Everyone should play D&D, and you can play the starter set. Super easy. Everyone can do it.
Absolutely. So, so yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you for the really amazing questions. Just a few other plugs. Diane will be a player in Realms of Ugador Season 2, which starts August 26th. She also has her own show that will be every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific starting in October called Legend of Shal Al Ghul. Did I say that right? I think I said it right.
Shal Al Ghul.
Shal Al Ghul. Damn it.
It's okay.
But she will be a weekly DM, her own weekly show. GW and Stuart, along with Thor, will be part of this new DM roundtable called DMocracy, which we are going to tease during UkadorCon in October. But we are that show will be live next spring. So what that is just really light tease. Those 3 DMs are going to build a world together, and each of them are going to create their own campaign. So there's a lot more details. I'm going to save it for UkadorCon so these guys can talk about it, and I'm not going to be part of that at all. GW is part of Season 1 of Realms of Ukador. If you want to see the finale, the last boss fight is on Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. here at twitch.tv/Fable42, where they go against the goddess of darkness, Riha. Hit that follow button. Make sure you're part of that. We have a lot of other really cool events this weekend. GW is DMing his first show. I just blanked on it. Title?
Rescue of the Taken tomorrow night.
Rescue of the Taken, which is tomorrow night.
So excited.
I will be playing in the next episode of Cantor Chronicles, which starts in 45 minutes. So go get a snack and come on back. That's a really good way to see. This is one of our normal weekly shows. It just happened to fall on GenCon weekend, which is awesome. So go ahead and check that out. It's DM'd by DM Screening, which is Logan Hanley. I think I've talked enough. Go ahead and hit the follow button. We love all of the support you guys have done. Amazing questions. So happy that we were able to do this during GenCon. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.